Welcome back to the C23 Labs channel. I'm Mushin, the co-founder of C23 Labs, and over the past 3 years I've spoken to over 2,000 tattoo artists about their social media marketing, business and sales skills. In this video I'll break down the winning formula behind the most successful tattoo reels, revealing the start, middle and end structure that makes them perform so well, and how you can use the hook, retain, reward structure that most content creators use to keep their audience engaged from start to finish. Enjoy the video and let's train. Okay, now let's break down the anatomy behind a successful Instagram reel. And I'm going to explain this through the phrase hook, retain, reward. I heard this term actually from a businessman called Alex Hormozi. I recommend you check him out if you don't know who he is. But I love this term because it simply explains and breaks down social media and ties into all the psychology we've discussed. It breaks down the structure of each reel in a nice storyline. So the hook, retain, reward. So let's start with the quick overview of hook, retain, reward. The hook is the first few seconds of your content that captures your audience's attention and draws them in. Retain is the middle of your reel, which holds the client's attention, right? That's why it's called retain, retaining attention. And then the reward is the end, so satisfying the audience, basically satisfying their reason for consuming that reel, which is in essence what the hook promised. And really every single reel you see, even 5-second long reels, use this structure, the hook, retain, reward structure. And I'll show you a couple of 5-second reel examples later in this video. So on that note, let's break down each part in detail: the hook, retaining and reward. So the hook, get them to notice your content. We're trying to get them to redirect their attention to whatever they were doing towards our content. There really is no such thing as a reel that's too long per se. It's simply just not engaging and interesting enough. People watch 50-minute Netflix long episodes, binge watch Netflix all the time because it's engaging enough to keep their attention. And the reason this ties into your hooks is because the better your hook is and the more engaging your hook is, the longer people will be willing to watch your content. People's opinions of your content are made in the first 3 seconds of your video. This expresses to the viewer, who by the way have the attention span of a goldfish, the main reason they should keep watching this video and keep watching your content. The reason I put an emphasis on they is because you cannot please everyone in one reel, but you can please different demographics of people by making hooks and making reels that are specified towards very specific people. The more targeted your hook is, the more your specific avatar or ideal client is willing to deem it worthy of their attention. As I've said in a previous video, it's not that your content is too long per se, it's just the barrier to entry for the quality of content has raised significantly due to the attention economy. Basically all businesses making a lot of their sales through content. It's really just higher standards. And your hook is what's going to differentiate you and your content and your reel from all of the other content that is in their feed to stop them and capture their attention and watch it. Once again, we haven't really changed neurologically as a species, right? It takes millions of years for us to evolve. All that's changed really is actually our environment. And because our environment has changed, so has our behavior and expectations around what is deemed worthy of our attention. So on that note, pick good topics for your hooks. Think curiosity, relevancy, like a personal relation to a topic of your ideal client. Ongoing hooks, so day 2 of your sleeve, right? That pulls people back into the storyline of that tattoo. Or calling out a fear. Hey, do you have a tattoo idea but you can't put it all on paper? Hey, do you have a tattoo idea but you can't seem to express it well enough to an artist? Or one recently that I made with one of our mentorship clients, Edwin, do you want a tattoo but haven't seen anything that resonates with you? Because Edwin does a lot of abstract tattoo work, and what he found was a lot of his clients really wanted a tattoo but didn't see anything that they liked or that they resonated with on their profile or with other artists in general until they found abstract work and Edwin. So we incorporated that into the hook and that captured so much more attention. But that's what I mean by getting very specific and getting very targeted, because if I'm someone who really wants a tattoo but really hasn't found anything that resonates with me, I'm going to stop and watch that reel because that reel is speaking to me. That's the power of a hook. And if Edvin's reel is 30 seconds or 2 minutes, the stronger the hook is, the more people will be willing to watch that 2-minute reel to satisfy their reason for consuming, as we'll get into. So there's really 3 types of hooks. There's visual, there's verbal, and there's written. So visual is a hook where something in the shot of the video changes that captures your attention. That's a visual hook. A verbal hook is when someone says something at the start of the reel, right? That's verbal. And then written is obviously what you'll see a lot of at the moment, which is the kind of subtitles or fonts, that's a written hook. So you've got visual, verbal, and written. There's 3 different types of hooks you can use. And to quote one of the most famous marketers, David Ogilvy, on hooks, he mentions, once you have written your headline, you have spent 80 cents of your advertising dollar. When he says headline, he obviously means hook because he's from the 20th century, but that is what he's really talking about. 80% of the success of your content stems from how good your hooks are. And I would arguably say it's even more than that now. The hook is pretty much 90%, 95% of what you should focus on. And once again, tying back into content, I know a lot of artists have told me that they've made a lot of reels that they put a lot of effort in, that was really well made, and that they felt didn't do as well as they should have. And all they needed to do after reviewing it was change the hook, make it a stronger hook, and really just test different hooks with the exact same video. And that actually results in way better results on that same reel. Not changing anything else other than the hook. Just a side note, if you're watching this and you feel that you've made a lot of reels that you think should have got a little bit more appreciation, then try 5 different hooks, visual, verbal, written, different angles on that same reel, repost it and see what happens. So the next step is retain. So the middle of your reel. So the goal of this is to keep people's attention, right? People naturally want to know what happens next, right? People want answers to the explanation or the hook that you've given. So make sure that your content, the middle of your reel, the retaining, the attention part, matches your hook really well and goes into more depth on what your hook is. Another issue I see a lot of artists make is they'll do a really great hook, but their reel after that doesn't really tie into the hook as much. Therefore, what captured people's attention, which is the hook, isn't what they're staying for. And that's where they leave as well. So you want to make sure that you have a cohesive storyline through or narrative through your content based on what you have promised in the hook. And another pro tip, I would highly recommend using subtitles for any verbal or narrative based reels, because a lot of people actually watch reels with no sound on when they're in public too. So you want to make sure no matter where anyone is, if they watch your reel, they're able to comprehend and take in what you're explaining and get that value from it with or without sound. Another helpful phrase when it comes to the retain part is think value per second. How does this shot benefit the overall reel storyline? Okay, if you feel that you have a bit of a redundant and repetitive amount of the same shot or the same angle or the same part of the storyline, then try to shorten it. Remember, value per reel, hook, retain, reward, which brings me into reward, which is the end of your reel. We want to satisfy their reason for consuming. Okay, this is super important too, because if you promise something in the hook, you give a great narrative in the middle of your reel, but you don't reward them at the end with coming to conclusion on that. For example, you do check out this, Greek mythology sleeve, finished sleeve, and then you don't show the finished sleeve. That would be an example of not rewarding the audience, which in turn is going to stop them from watching any more of your content in the future. The same if you were to say, for example, here's 5 tips on how to make more money, and you only give 3. That is not fulfilling on the promise that you gave in the hook. Even though those 3 tips might be amazing, you haven't satisfied the audience's reason for consuming, therefore they won't watch more content. So it really has to all tie in together like a nice narrative. That's why it's a great structure that I like. Hook, retain, and reward. Make sure it all ties in together. Make sure there's a conclusion, because remember, people love to know the end, how things end. And you want to have a reputation of delivering on the promises you make when it comes to content. Once again, if you don't reward them, they will never watch your content again. That's why I personally don't like the reels that are 1 second long and they say read the caption. As the viewer, had to search for the reward myself and put in a lot of extra effort, which causes cognitive strain. Remember, that's logical thinking rather than emotional, which means that I've personally found the reward myself and I don't contribute that to you. So you want to make sure that not only does it have a cohesive narrative, but it's really easy to watch, consume, and the audience hasn't really had to make a huge effort to comprehend what you're saying or what you're showing. So as I said at the start, even every 5-second reel you see has these components, has this structure. Okay, for example, let's talk about one of Oscar's famous sleeve roll-up tattoo sleeve reveals on the arm where he rolls up the shirt. Okay, the hook is the visual thumbnail and the sneak peek of the finished piece that he shows at the start of the clip. The retain is the rolling up of the sleeve, right, to reveal the piece, and then the reward itself is showing that revealed piece for a couple of seconds for people to satisfy people's reason for consuming, right? So even the shortest amount of reels to some extent use this structure, but most importantly, when you're making content that is narrative based, testimonial based, storyline based, day in the life, you want to make sure that you have a great hook. You retain them well by thinking value per second. Does this shot benefit the video overall? and then the reward as well. Do I deliver on the promise I gave in the hook? Because remember, you don't decide if your content is good, your audience does. So as I said, if you feel your content should have got more recognition, you made a reel and it didn't get the recognition you felt it deserved, test 5 different hooks, repost it again, and I promise you, you'll see one of those 5 variations do much, much better than the previous 4 and the original one that you posted. And once again, get rid of this limiting belief that if you post the same type of reel with the same tattoo 5 times, your audience is going to see it 5 times. Trust me, if you posted the same reel 10 times, not even 50% of your audience will see that, because think of the amount of people that your audience follows. Okay, different businesses, different creators who post many, many times a day. Okay, people, the whole world, the whole business world and marketing world is trying to capture people's attention every single second. Don't think that if you post 5 variations of the same tattoo and the same concept of reel, it's going to have a negative effect. It's not going to have it whatsoever. And it's going to give you that real data on what type of hooks you should focus more on, and what in particular capture the attention of your audience, like what we did with Edvin. And just to wrap up this video, I'll give you my personal experience on this. So I made a couple of reels, very in-depth psychology-based reels back in the day when I was first starting with content. And I put a lot of effort into them. I thought the script was really, really good. And I was personally very proud of some of the reels, one in particular on loss aversion. And it did terrible. And I was, a little bit upset. I didn't really understand why, but obviously I wasn't speaking the language of my audience. So what I did was, like I'm mentioning to you on this video now, I took that video, I remade it with a different hook, I reposted it, and that video actually kind of went mini viral in the tattoo industry and was seen by Oscar Akermo, who from that video went through all of my other content, liked what I was doing, reached out to me and mentioned about C23 Labs, and now we're business partners. Okay, so that is the power of testing different hooks and being more specific on the promise that you're giving and starting to understand the language that you need to speak in order to resonate with your target audience. Thank you for sticking out the video. I hope you learned at least one new thing. And of course, if you learned something new, then you'll love this next video where we're going to go back to the reels we previously saved in this mini-series and taking all of our new knowledge from these videos and breaking down these reels in detail to see why they really worked, which you can watch right here.